Hi, Simone. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, Julia. How are you today?
Well, thanks. We're excited to have you. It's always fun when another EquiLife health coach joins because even though we always get to work together, I love to get to know you guys even more. But I think it's also exciting for our listeners to get to know the EquiLife team. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. What I would love to do to start is share with our listeners a little bit about what you do currently. And then I would love for you, we'll kind of back it up when you're done doing that and talk about what you were doing before you came to EquiLife. But what are you doing within the company currently?
Well, right now I do work for EquiLife as a health coach. I'm also the lead health coach trainer. So I help train all the newer health coaches that come and join our team. So that's currently my role. I also do some product formulation for two other female-based supplement companies on the side. And that's about it for right now.
Okay. Yeah. And have you always been in the health coach or health and wellness fields? Kind of, we've had a lot of guests who've done other things and they have this kind of pain to passion story. Tell us a little bit about your evolution to where you are now.
So basically, I've always been in the health field. Growing up, I had a few of my own little issues. I always wanted to be a pediatrician, but then my first diagnosis of scoliosis, where a surgeon basically told me that the only way to heal me would be to put a metal rod in my spine to help straighten that curve, would be my only way of fixing myself. So when I heard that there was no other way to help fix myself, I was just like, okay, that was my thinking that I want to go into the natural health field versus being a children's doctor. So I literally did like yoga, Pilates, and things like that. I went to chiropractor, and I actually helped to reverse some of that degree naturally without having any medical intervention. And then I also, being a teenager, I had painful periods, acne, and the doctor was like, hey, you know what? Let's kill two birds with one stone. Let's put you on some birth control pills to help, take care of those problems. And I didn't know better. So my mom didn't know better. So they put me on the pill at such a young age. And then years later, when I would go for a physical and they saw I had some abnormal cells. So, the doctor kind of like scared me, oh, you have abnormal cells. This could be like cancerous, et cetera. And at that point, again, I was like, okay, let me get out my nutrition books out. I had the book, Woman's Wisdom, Women's Bodies by Kristen Northrup. So that was like my Bible in my teens. And I looked up, what does it mean when I have abnormal cells? And then it showed like, if you are on the pill, it depletes like B vitamins and other nutrients and can lead to these abnormal cells. So I basically took some vitamins and helped to reverse those abnormal cells. So I didn't have them anymore in my next pap smear. And so then basically I went to university in Toronto I wanted to actually be a child psychologist. And so I got my Bachelor of Science in Biological Psychology. And I was always talking about health to all my fellow classmates. And they're like, you should really go to the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition and become a nutritionist. Like, you're so passionate about health. You're always drinking like your chlorophyll drinks and all these things and helping everybody. So that's what I did. I decided to not be a child psychologist and to go into nutrition and become a registered holistic nutritionist. And then after that, I moved to New York, and basically I worked in various startups. So 3 different startup companies, a lot of supplement companies. So where we would actually do in-person consultations and basically tailor supplement programs for people. And that's where my passion for formulation came in. And I would start helping out the natural pharmacist who would formulate the supplements. He would allow me to help him and then read labels, proofread, what we can say, what we can't say, FDA wise. Mm-hmm. And we also worked with like an environmental doctor. So from that early on, I already knew that environmental toxicity played a huge role in people's health issues. And for the most part, everybody was coming in with weight issues. So we would always, they'd say, I'm doing everything right. I'm eating properly, and, eating organic, all the good things. But there was always that missing link of environmental toxicities, whether they had mold in the house, whether they were remodeling their home and they were inhaling a lot of formaldehyde from carpets, new furniture, things like that. And their weight just halted. And that was enough to like overfill their rain barrel. Mm-hmm. So, and then I worked for like a famous French doctor who launched his company here in the United States, in New York as well. So that was like fun, working in like marketing, nutrition, all different aspects with product knowledge and formulating supplements and food products for that company. So it was nice because I was a health coach answering all the nutrition questions, helping marketing with, writing Instagram posts, things like that. And then working with our e-commerce and product team, developing products and sourcing ingredients.
Yeah. So your hands in a bunch of different things.
Yeah. And so basically living that crazy New York lifestyle, fast paced, on the go, don't even realize it until I actually moved to California, and then worked for another company where basically we did body work to deal with like the fascia and the trauma that people harbor in their body, that trapped emotion that they don't want to let out. And we would do like subclinical testing as well. And we would also have like functional progression trainers to help teach people how to move properly. So it was like the whole kind of package. And so my last struggle was the fertility piece. So living in New York, I tried to get pregnant for a long time. I started at around 34. Mm-hmm. And then I got pregnant within a year, but I had a miscarriage. And then for the next 6 years, I couldn't conceive. And doctors were telling me there was nothing wrong with me. It's, undiagnosed infertility. Maybe I'm just, I'm older already, trying to tell me I'm a geriatric pregnancy if I did get pregnant at that age, that my ovarian reserve was that of a 40-year-old. So I basically took matters into my own hands and stopped that New York lifestyle where I was working out like 7 days a week, had that, that New York mentality, like how much can I possibly fit into a day? Like how many workouts can I get in? Can I get up and do a 6 a.m. spin class before I get on the subway to go to work in Manhattan and then come home? And can I do another workout before I make dinner? That was like the kind of lifestyle I lived, just to like, keep up with everybody else in New York.
Yeah. That fast pace, like do more, And so sometimes I feel like, cause I'm somebody that I actually don't love big cities. They I instantly pick up on like the anxious energy in a big city. Right. And I feel like sometimes like it would be hard to slow down in a place like that when like everybody's moving a mile a minute around you. And like you kind of alluded to that you were just like kind of doing what everybody else was doing. And it was just like the life that everybody else was leading. But doesn't mean that it's a healthy one.
No, even my brother would come to visit me in New York and we'd be walking in Soho and he's just like, I got to go back to your apartment. Like there's too much energy around here. And I'm like, are you serious? You're from Toronto. Like, I mean, it's another big city and, and he's like, no, this is just on another level. And I'm like, I don't notice it until now when I go back and visit. Now I'm like, I get that nervous energy.
Yes. Yeah. And so when you moved to somewhere near the coast,
I moved to LA and I lived in Venice Beach, and now I'm more in Calabasas.
Okay. Yeah.
So
let's, I think something that can be super helpful for our listeners, whether they're coaches themselves or, just listening, kind of understanding what health coaches do, is we're both moms. We're both health coaches and we both had fertility struggles, and we deal with a lot of women who come, to EquiLife with fertility issues. And I think that it can be incredibly relieving in a sense for other women to understand, one, that they're not alone, but even that women who are kind of like doing all the things, can experience something very similar. So I'm curious if you would be willing to share kind of how so you said you took matters into your own hands. What did you kind of do in that interim of, doctors telling you had low egg reserve and, the actual time that you conceived with your first child?
Right. So basically when I was in New York, like I said, I was doing crazy workouts all the time. And then when I moved, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. In my head, I already knew that what I was doing is probably weakening my adrenals. I always had a period. So no matter how low carb I ate, how little I weighed, I would always have a period. So I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with my period. I'm healthy, right? I'm eating all organic foods. I'm drinking clean water. I'm doing all the things. I'm working out. And, I had other friends who were like, you need to like not work out. Like my doctor said, stop working out as much. Your estrogen will go up or whatnot, and you could get pregnant easier. And I was like, no. And then my OBGYN was like, you need to do IVF. Like that's your only chance. And I said, I'm not deficient in IVF drugs. My body's just not balanced. So I will figure it out then. So then I was like, okay, I'm moving to LA. I moved to LA and I got rid of those gym workouts. And I just started walking on the beach, grounding myself, literally living that LA lifestyle. I'm like, okay, from New York to here, everybody's all about the full moon, Mercury retrograde, all that good stuff. So I was like, I'm going to start saying positive affirmations as I walk this beach. Then I looked into positive affirmations for fertility, and I was doing those. I found actually found a holistic chiropractor who tested me for candida and things like that. So I was already doing functional medicine detoxes regularly. So that I think is important to do. And then I did the candida protocol, which helped, get rid of candida and help balance out my gut. And then I found another place where they actually did subclinical testing that tests your adrenals, liver, all that kind of stuff. And that was like my first, like nobody ever like tested that type of stuff, right? Kind of like what we do here at EquiLife. And so I had those results, and it showed like underactive adrenals. So when you see it on paper, you're like, okay, now I know. I'm not guessing, right? Why guess when you can test? And I took some, adrenal support, et cetera. And, my, coach at the place I went to was like saying like, just try not to get pregnant for 3 months. Okay. Like just let the protocol work for 3 months before you get pregnant. So after a month, I did get pregnant, but I had a miscarriage. So then I was just so hopeful. Like I was not upset. I was just like, oh my God, I was already almost 40. So I was just like, I got pregnant. I was like, yes, my body works. I'm like, right on. I'll keep doing like the positive affirmations and the fertility affirmations and pretending I have a soul baby in my body and things of that nature, and doing like more restorative yoga. Cause I was like, if I'm doing yoga, it's going to be hot yoga because I want to sweat and all that kind of stuff. And then I switched from doing that into doing the restorative yoga. And then after a month, I got pregnant again. So then that baby stayed, and I gave birth at 41 to my first daughter. And then even my OBGYN was like, okay, like, I don't even know how you did this naturally, because there's only like a 2% chance for someone your age to give birth. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I can help your clients. And then 9 months later, I got pregnant again with my second baby girl. So it was unplanned, but amazing that I had a second baby at 41, I guess. Yeah, they were like a year and a half apart. So right away. And both healthy, both natural births. And that was my story.
That's amazing, because, we deal with, women in their early 30s, mid 30s, but when you get closer to 40, you do have, biology working, a little bit against you. I would never count out, anybody based on that, but amazing that even at your age. And it's so funny that you kind of talk about like the affirmations and all of that, because one of the biggest things that I did to get me through my infertility journey was actually change my mindset. And it can be such an important piece, I think, because becoming a mother is, whether or not you're conscious to it or not, is a pretty emotional process.
Yep.
And being able to kind of, put yourself in a good mind frame before conceiving, or even getting to the point where you can conceive, I think is incredibly helpful. And of course, you can take all the adrenal supplements in the world, but if you were still doing 2 workouts a day, our bodies, and I preach this to women all the time, your body has to feel safe, feel like it's a safe enough environment to grow, carry, and deliver another human. And if you're constantly depleting it, or you're constantly expending energy that your body doesn't really have, or you're always stressed, it's just like not the best environment. It's always working to protect us. And so all of those lifestyle modifications you made, but also the mindset piece of it is so important. And almost, I forget if I shared this with you, but the book, the author, oh my gosh, Brianna Weiss.
Oh, yes.
She does a lot of like that visionary. She kind of tells you like, you can't start a journey until you have your destination in mind. And so like you said, like picturing your soul baby. And like, I did tons of that visualization of like, what would it feel like to hold my baby for the first time? And it sounded so silly when someone was like walking me through it. But looking back, it really shaped me to be like the kind of mom that I was. Do you feel like your struggle kind of brought you to maybe a different place that your friends didn't experience if they just kind of got pregnant easily?
Yeah. For most of my friends, it was really easy for them. And I would always even visit them, help them with their children. Like I was never one of those people who would be like, oh God, she's pregnant again. Like, I'm not going to help her. Or like, I don't want to see her. I love children so much that when they're pregnant, I just want to help them. I want to like help them take care of their kids and all that, because it takes a village, and I wanted to be their support as well. And, kind of like rub off that baby magic on myself. Right.
Yeah.
So, I feel like if you haven't gone through the struggles yourself, then it's hard to understand, because everybody just kept telling me like, oh, just relax, just calm down. You're too anxious about it. And it's just like, no. And even like my mom, she's like, I don't know what to say to you, because I never went through this. Like I just got pregnant. Like I didn't deal with any of this.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I've gone through it, it's easier to help clients, when they see like, oh, you've gone through it. And, I make myself vulnerable to the clients so they understand like they're not going through it alone. There's hope. And I always want to provide hope.
Yes. Yeah. Such a good point, because I think people can come to us thinking that like, we're like the epitome of, health perfection. And like, we never have, flex meals, and we don't do this wrong. Or we've never gone through like, significant health struggles of our own, but it's usually quite the opposite. Infertility, again, because it's such an emotional component. And I think women specifically bear like the brunt of like, what's wrong with me? I have to fix myself. Like, why is this not happening? It's supposed to happen. I'm a woman. Like, what's the problem? What am I deficient in? All of that. Yeah. And you can kind of start to think that there's something wrong with you, and to have somebody just be able to validate there's not necessarily something wrong with you. We have imbalances that we need to tweak, and inherently you are not broken. We just need to help fix the processes that make your body feel safe enough for this next step to happen. And I think they can relax into trusting us when we're vulnerable and they know we've been through it and we know what they're experiencing. Because for some women, it's incredibly challenging and depressing. And the longer it goes on, my infertility journey was about 2 years. Yours sounds like it was much longer than that. And I think the longer it goes on, 6, with each year, you probably just get more discouraged, and you have to like kind of pull yourself out of it that much more. Yeah. And being able to empathize with somebody who's going through that, I think is really powerful.
Yeah. There were so many times where I'm just like, this is it. And I literally had all these books on fertility, and I'm like, okay, I'm giving it to my acupuncturist. Here, you can have these for your clients who want to conceive, because I'm done, and then I'm like, I'm not reading any more books. I'm not doing anything else. I'm just going to do my positive affirmations, and that's it. I'm like, I'm not going to take any more supplements. I was like already taking a ton of supplements to keep my eggs young. I'm like, well, I may not have the ovarian reserve of a 25-year-old, but I'm damn sure going to make sure my eggs are good quality by taking my resveratrol and L-carnitine and, ubiquinol and all that kind of stuff. So luckily I was in the supplement world that I was already taking that kind of stuff in my 30s to keep, myself healthy egg wise.
Yes. So funny, because that's exactly how I got pregnant. The month that I literally gave up, I stopped going to acupuncture. I was like not drinking around like the time that I thought I was ovulating. And after that, and like me and my husband, I think we went on vacation, and I was just like, I'm not even trying anymore. Like, I'm just done for now. And like, I drank, I think like a fish, and I was done. And that was the month I got pregnant.
It's amazing.
because I just kind of like gave it up, and my body probably wasn't so tense to like the control and so funny. Okay. So along with kind of on that tune, so now we do both have two beautiful, healthy children, and we're still health coaches. And so not only do we deal with women who are, trying to get pregnant themselves, but we also see a lot of moms who are either health-minded, or they might be in the IHP program, or they might be health coaches themselves, and their kids have, health-based challenges, or they run a lab and their aluminum is super high. And it's like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? I'm doing all the things. And we can kind of, I think, beat ourselves up as moms because, we should have done more, or what are we doing wrong? And sometimes, ignorance can be bliss. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I knew nothing.
Yeah.
I don't actually wish that. But in times when I feel really overwhelmed by all the knowledge that I have, it can feel like a lot of responsibility to hold that amount of knowledge, because now if you know all that, you have to do all of this. Right. And so what is kind of your experience with that? Have you had issues, come up with your kids that feel, deflated? Do you see that with your own clients?
So with my own children, basically I had my firstborn, she would have some kind of like cyclic vomiting. She would vomit like once a month for no reason. Didn't know what was going on since she was like 2 years old. And I ran the organic acids test on her, showed a bunch of overgrowth on page 1, lots of yeast overgrowth, Clostridia, all the things elevated. And you're thinking like, I do everything right. Like, why does my child have all this? And you know what? I can't control everything. I can't control if she's drinking the water out of a public pool and she's at daycare and they're giving her whatnot. And then we did the kids CBO protocol with her, and it helped a bit, but she was still having that cyclic vomiting. So then I was like, you know what? I'm going to run a mycotoxin test on myself. So it came back with a few things elevated. So I ran one on her, and she had different ones elevated, but she had the Stachybotrys black mold, both of them off the chart elevated. And even GPL Labs was like dumbfounded. They're like, does she have any like ADHD like symptoms? Does she have any autistic type symptoms? Can she hold a pencil? And I'm like, yeah, she can do all of that. And they're like, well, why did you run this test then if she doesn't have any of those type of symptoms? Because that's severe levels. It's like she's living in black mold 24/7. And I'm like, no, she just has that cyclic vomiting. And, I did not have that on my test. So it's kind of like, okay, now I got to be a detective and figure out where is this coming from? So of course, she went to a preschool in Venice, near Venice Beach, which is, very humid. There was a very, very old, beautiful preschool. And I think it was from the preschool that the preschool had a lot of black mold in it. And, she's sleeping there on the floors, and they're like the creaky hardwood floors, the original hardwood floors from like the 1900s. And
which are gorgeous.
Yes. And so, it helps me be more humble when I deal with moms on the call. We have a lot of moms on the call, and they kind of get on the call and they're almost like, they don't want to see the results and talk about it because they feel like they failed as a parent. And then, I always like to tell a story to the client, whether it's something that I've experienced or another client's experience, to make them feel like there's hope, things get better, and it's not your fault that this is happening. So when they hear that I have a daughter, I eat all organic, I have, 2 air purifiers, I have like 3 water filters, all the things. And, you just don't know, things can still happen. So they feel a lot more at ease. They can open up, we build a connection, that vulnerability, and they're just like, wow, okay, like I've had so many at the end of the call, like tell me like, thank you for telling me that you have gone through this. Cause now I feel like not a bad person.
Yes.
And I'm just like, sometimes you feel like you're oversharing, you don't want to overshare because it's about them, but they actually do appreciate it. So I feel like it is helpful when I share my story about my daughter who has had multiple tests and they have all these crazy findings that you would never think that your daughter would have this, but it happens.
Yes. Yeah. And it's again, unless you're keeping them in like a bubble in your, house forever, we don't have all of the control. And I think it's interesting that, GPL is like, oh, does she have all of these issues? The truth is if you were feeding her really crummy food and she wasn't, breathing clean air at home and all of that stuff would likely compile and she would have likely had symptoms but all of the things that you were doing were actually keeping her from experiencing any other symptom other than just cyclical vomiting from the black mold exposure that she got at preschool. Like that's an amazing thing, right? But as moms, we immediately go to, oh my God, how could I have let this happen? How did it happen? How do I fix it? Instead of thinking, okay, actually this, she should have more symptoms based on what's going on here.
Yep.
And she doesn't, likely because of all of the things you do control. And I have friends, that are like, oh my God, you don't like keep this in the house or that in the house. And I always say, I control our environment in a way that feels good for me, because then I don't stress when like they go to a birthday party and like they eat, whatever cupcake is, because everything, in my opinion, is an accumulation, right? If they're eating that stuff all the time, well, that's when they get sick. But if 85% of the time they're getting really good, wholesome food, they're getting clean water, they're breathing clean air, that's other stuff that kind of comes into play when you don't have 100% of the control and they're just being kids. It doesn't tip the scales in the same way as it would, if they weren't doing all that good stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And supporting, I think moms, we can feel so isolated. I think because of like what mainstream media, presents to us as like what normal parenting is and what normal childhood is. And we can kind of feel like, oh, we're like the black sheep. And even some moms probably get on the call, even though we're health coaches, and they're like, I've had a bunch of moms who are like, yeah, I do like this and that. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And when they kind of know that I'm a little, I do 5 things, crazy for my kids, they're like, oh, I do that too. But like, they almost don't want to share it because they don't want to seem like they're being too much or, doing too much.
Yeah.
And so I think we can just be so hard on ourselves when it comes to like acceptance and are we doing a good enough job, and having a coach on the other line who's one human willing to be vulnerable with their own story. And who's also a coach and a mom and has dealt with, real life instances, with their own kids. Can be completely comforting. And then, like you said, the client opens up more, you get more information and you're able to help them because they trust you. I mean, the trust factor is so important.
Right. And then also because I've done the protocols with my kids, that it's easier for me to give advice for their kids, because it's hard to get these supplements in kids. And it's like, oh, they can't eat this. They have to eliminate all these types of foods. And then it's like, I can better guide them because I can tell them what I've done with mine to get them, if they have to do the kids CBO protocol and they have to eliminate all these different foods and things of that nature. And then the food sensitivities, all that. And then the supplements, like, okay, let's break it and put it in XYZ versus like, don't be worried that, okay, this has to be on an empty stomach completely versus, take this with food, and then try and like work with them so they don't feel overwhelmed, because it is overwhelming when one day your kid's like, yeah, this is fine, I love the taste. And then the next day they're like, ew, I don't like it anymore. And it's just like, what? You just been taking this for like 2 months and you didn't care about the taste. Now all of a sudden you don't like it.
Yes. And actually, I need you to keep taking it because we're in the middle of trying to do something. Yeah. And just understanding that like everything's not going to be perfect, but doing something's better than nothing, and helping a parent pivot, when things don't go perfectly right. Because inevitably there will likely be hiccups along the way, just like with an adult journey, with getting well. Kids are the same way. There just tends to be like more more issues, more defiance, if you will.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious if we kind of talked about like the kids and the fertility. It sounds like you did a lot of reading and maybe have some favorites as far as fertility is concerned. Do you have like a favorite hormone author or someone who talks a lot about fertilities or hormone balance that you'd be willing to share with our guests?
I actually really like Laura Braden and Aviva Romm.
Okay.
So those are my two for like hormones, fertility. And Laura Braden's books are actually really easy to read. And Aviva Romm's are broken down really easily as well. But I do like Laura Braden a lot.
Okay, great. And if everybody's listening and kind of wants to find out more, do you have a social media account, website, anything that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I'm on Instagram as Simone Gloger. That's my handle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success podcast. I think this was such valuable information for our listeners, whether they're coaches or just moms themselves. So I appreciate you sharing your story with all of us.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Talk soon, Simone. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.